Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Saul Talk, a series of podcasts coming out of WB Saul High School of Agricultural Sciences in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm Mr. Smith, your Saul Talk host, as well as the career and technical educator responsible for the natural resource management students featured in this episode. Our podcast objective is to bring awareness, understanding, provide solution, and advocate for environmental topics and issues relevant to our class, directly affecting our communities, and impacting our planet at large. Today, my students will be discussing, celebrating, and sharing information about relevant, current, and historical Earth professionals. Each student was provided an Earth professional who is or has led and influenced policies and or contributed towards identifying, researching, resolving, or improving upon environmental issues. The collection of international Earth professionals presented come from a diverse variety of backgrounds and experiences that reflect the race, ethnicity, and gender of my students. With all that said, I would like to introduce to you our first group of students, Daniel, Dimitri, Kailamar, and Sean, also known as the World Crew.
What's up, listeners? It's the World Crew, and today we will be smacking you with some knowledge. Now, if you don't know who we are, hi, I'm Daniel, aka Dirty Dan, and I like to import foreign goods from Canada.
And hi, I'm Dimitri, and I live in my mom's basement, but she doesn't know about it.
Hi, I'm Kailamar. I dress up as cheese when I'm alone.
And hi, I'm Sean, and I've been locked in Walmart for 16 years. Please help me.
Now today, we're going to be talking about some amazing Earth professionals that we have been doing research on lately. All these people have had some sort of impact when it comes to our environment and its development. Now, Dimitri, please tell us how you're affected our environment.
Well, Daniel, Emmett Chappelle is an African-American man who is solely responsible for several different advancements in the scientific field as a whole, not just in one specific area. But his work was with fluorescence and bioluminescence. Using luciferin and luciferase, the chemicals that fireflies use in order to glow, he was able to put it into soil and see the bacteria react to it. And later on, he used this to develop ways to use fluorescence for lots more things instead of just looking.
I was given Inez Mejia to do research on. She was the first Mexican-American female botanist. One thing I learned about her and still find crazy is that she went back to school at the age of 51. It's pretty uncommon, but it definitely takes dedication. She went to UC Berkeley, and that's where she discovered botany. She was well known for her expeditions around North and South America, where she collected more than 145,000 specimens in her 13-year career. She also got 50 new ones named after her, which is pretty cool. Another thing that amazes me was that her level of independence at that time, being a woman in the early 20th century, especially since at the time, married women weren't allowed to have or be provided their own passports. In one of the videos I watched on pbs.org, in their PBS American Masters series, they had one dedicated to her, and I found one of her most famous quotes, which was, "I don't think there's any place in the world where a woman can't venture alone," which I 100% agree with, and she was a perfect example of that.
All right. Pretty nice. All right, I've been looking into Warren Washington. He was an atmospheric scientist and got to work with multiple presidents from Jimmy Carter to Barack Obama. He worked for their President's National Committee of Oceans and Atmosphere Department. But for his main career, he mostly worked with the National Science Board as one of their, chairmen, so...
Now, Dimitri, please tell us how your scientific engineer's past life/origin story has affected how and what he came to today.
Sure thing, Dan. So, my man Chappelle was born in October of 1925 in Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm not talking modern-day Phoenix with all the bright lights and cities and everything. No, I'm talking good old-fashioned desert, and you gotta farm to survive. Now, his parents farmed cotton and they raised cattle, and as a child, Chappelle would wander around the desert looking for interesting plants, insects, and fossils, or anything that he just found cool. And he went to an all-black elementary and all-black high school and graduated valedictorian in 1942. And shortly after graduating, he was drafted into the 92nd Infantry Division to fight in the campaign through Italy in World War II. And this is definitely where he showed his prowess as an engineer throughout his life. He attended Phoenix College in Arizona, achieved an associate's degree in electrical engineering. He also attended the University of California, Berkeley, where he received a bachelor's of science in biology, and he taught in biochemistry at McCary Medical College for several years. And this is actually where he began his research into iron recycling in red blood cells and how it affects anaphylactic shock, which leads into his later developments when he tested for putting luciferin and luciferase into different compounds to watch them react with any bacteria that may be present there. Because luciferin and luciferase, how they work is when they mix with the ATP, which is the life energy of a cell, they create a light energy, which is how fireflies glow. So when you put those chemicals into the soil, if there were any bacteria, they would react and they would begin glowing. And you can also use this for not just soil, but to put it into blood samples or urine samples to see if there's an infection in said samples of urine or blood.
For a quick summary on this, we could say that Emmett Chapelle, he was a very big environmental engineer. He was a pioneer for the fluorescence and bioluminescence field.
Most definitely.
And also, if you could say that one thing that was maybe something that furthered him upon his give him motivation in order to become such a glorified engineer in his field was going into the military, as it showed him what hardship was like. And even though he was African American, he pushed through that in order to become such a well-known name in his field.
Dan, if I may interrupt you, actually, it was because he was African American that he was not able to use his military past. He was not able to use the fact that he went into the military to pay for his college. And when he went to Phoenix to receive his associates in electrical engineering, he was just, due to his African American descent, he was not allowed to be given any money to fund him furthering his education, which was actually quite a sad thing to hear. But nonetheless, he went to college, and then he went to college again, and then he went to teach at a college, and then he went to get his doctorate or his PhD at Stanford. But he then accepted a research position at the Research Institute for Advanced Studies in Maryland, so he never actually accomplished his PhD. But yes, I do still agree with you.
And then, thank you for that, Dimitri.
Okay, from the research I did, I could tell that Inez's early life was pretty rough. She was born May 24th, 1870 in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. Her parents had divorced when she was 9, and she stayed in the States with her mom. She attended private boarding schools in various states. And after she finished school, she had to move to Mexico City to take care of her dying father and his poultry business. She married twice. Her first husband sadly passed away of illness, and her second husband had bankrupted her father's farm, which is sad because this caused her mental health to plummet. She then moved to San Francisco to seek medical help, and she met psychiatrist Dr. Philip King Brown. I feel if she hadn't met him, she probably wouldn't be where she was, because he was the one who recommended she join clubs such as Sierra Club and the Save the Redwoods League. I feel if it weren't for her, people today would probably still be looking for or learning about these specimens that she had discovered. She definitely is an important figure in the environmental world, in my opinion.
While it is sad that her father had died and her husband had treated her like that, if she hadn't have gone through such a hard time, that might not have pushed her in order to keep going, in order to become that leading engineer in her field. Would you agree with this, Kilmar?
Yes, exactly. Especially if she hadn't met her psychiatrist.
Yeah, that helped her a crud ton. And then Sean, for your man.
Let's see here. Washington was born in Portland, Oregon in 1936 on August 28th. And he received his master's degree in meteorology from Oregon State University. And then decided to, move a little bit, go over to Penn State University, where he had gotten his doctorate in meteorology. And then after that, he decided to join the NCAR, which is the National Center for Atmosphere Research. He did that in 1963. He started out as a research scientist, and after a while, he got to get his way up to chairman.
I guess we would say that considering he got to work with so many influential people in his generation, ranging from President Jimmy Carter to President Barack Obama, we could say that was one of the reasons, while it was one of the reasons that he was so influential and such a big name, it also helped him get the resources that he needed and that he couldn't really get because of being an African American, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, thank you, Homo sapiens, for tuning in to this knowledge beatdown. Other than that, have a great day, eat some food, and that's it. Peace.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't get locked in Walmart.
Thank you, World Crew, for your insightfulness and good humor. Let's explore more Earth professionals with our eco warriors Joshua, Maxine, Sierra, Anthony, and Ryan.
Stepping into the arena for the very first time, we have Josh the Justifiable, Max the Mysterious, Sai the Serious, Ant the Guerrero Ahil, and Ryan.
Ryan, are you there?
A lot has been going on in the world lately, as y'all have noticed. Have y'all noticed any environmental changes since y'all were like a kid or young?
For me, I have noticed a lot of things have been changing about the environment, especially the weather. Because when I was younger, it used to be real cold, but then as the years progress, I realized that the temperature has been unbalanced a lot. Like sometimes during the winter, you'll get a really warm day, and then the next day you get a really cold day, and like that's like a really big thing that I've noticed.
I live near a forest. And lately they've been cutting it down for either building schools or stores, and is cutting down habitats. And I've been seeing a lot more deer getting hit by cars.
So I don't really know much about this because or to the point where because I was young at the time. But now I can say that I've heard that due to recent changes in temperature around the world, sea levels have continued to rise at an alarming rate.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. I remember when I was a child, at least, there were a lot more trees around my neighborhood and a lot more green there than there is today. And the streets were a lot cleaner. There was almost no trash on my streets ever. Now there's trash everywhere.
I feel as though there has to have been some people that have done research about these topics.
Okay, so you know how I started talking about how the weather's changed and whatever, the climate and weather's changed. Well, the person I've researched, who was June Bacon Bursey, she was the first African American weather woman with a degree in meteorology. And not only that, she also won a seal of approval in air meteorology, and that was very rare back then, especially for an African American woman. And I just wanted to put that out there. And not only that, what also amazes me is how she wanted to help women just like her. So what she did is that she went on a game show and she won $64,000. And what she did with that money is that she put it into a scholarship fund for women like her. And it helped 12 women in the 1970s and the 1990s get into college.
So the person I researched was Rachel Carson, and she saw birds falling out of trees and dying. She was a biologist, studied the area, and found out that the pesticide DDT was killing the birds. DDT was put on plants so they won't have any fire ants, but it didn't kill the fire ants. So if the birds ate bugs that had DDT on it, it would kill them.
So I actually brought up the recent changes in sea level for a very specific reason, considering the fact that my person, his name is Evan Ford. He's a well-known oceanographer. He was the first African-American scientist to participate in research dives aboard a submersible and completed many successful dive expeditions in several submarine canyons. He earned many degrees, such as a BA degree in geology with an oceanography specialty later, and then later earning his MA degree in marine geology and geophysics from Columbia University. In his career time, he taught over 15,000 students and opened up young minds to new things that involved oceanography.
My person was Mario Molina. He was a Mexican chemist. He helped in finding the Antarctic ozone hole and was actually the person to find out that CFCs were very bad for our ozone layer. And if I'm not mistaken, one CFC can kill up to 100,000 ozone particles. And CFCs were mostly used in refrigerators back then. He was one of the reasons that CFCs were discontinued today. And something bad that recently happened to him, actually, on October 7th, he actually passed away.
That's really sad, actually.
Actually, my person passed away this year too. But my person passed away in January and she died of old age.
I think we should talk about how each person was discriminated against or had some type of criticism.
So my person wasn't discriminated against, as far as I know, because most of his classmates when he were Mexican just like him.
My person, she was going to college for her meteorology degree. Her advisor actually told her she should major in home economics, in which when she did, she actually got a D in that, but she had an A in meteorology.
Rachel Carson was criticized a great deal. She was called radical and brushed her off as a communist. And they also called her unscientific. A lot of chemical industries threatened to sue her because of her book, Silent Spring. But the thing I like is her political view, and her idea was the state and society do not have moral authority to dominate nature, and that's what I really most like about her.
Mario Molina says the planet is just too small for these developing countries to repeat the economic growth in the same way that the rich countries have done it in the past. We don't have enough natural resources. We don't have enough atmosphere. Clearly something has to change. I found that really interesting because it just shows how much pollution has done in the world from the span of back then to now, where the air was much cleaner before the Industrial Revolution. And since all these machines and stuff, our ozone layer has been dying, and there's not enough recreational supplies for everyone in the world. I just found that really interesting. All I really have to say is, and he's done so much for the world. Today, I don't know where we would be without him. I don't know how badly the ozone layer would be damaged without him.
I also want to give a shout out to my person too. I want to thank her really, because without her, not a lot of women could be where they are right now because of what she did and how she threw off the stereotypes of how women shouldn't be in meteorology and everything.
Actually, I do have a quote for him. Aging is not for sissies. Be gentle with yourself. Enjoy life every day. Above ground is a good one. If you don't believe me, miss one all from his. So basically, my interpretation is take every day one by one, take it slow, and make sure that you're doing what you love. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on a lot of good opportunities. I guess that wraps it up.
Ryan, are you there?
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in and listening to our very first podcast.
Well done, World Crew, and thank you for sharing. I now would like to shift our attention to a group of young ladies I like to refer to as the Earth Sisters. Take it away, Jay, Ashanti, Sierra, Zadia Elise, and Timera.
Tuned in with your favorite Earth Sisters, JK, Shani Baby, Mira, C, and Zadi. And welcome to the Earth Sisters podcast.
Today, we'll be talking about powerful women of color who have markedly contributed to sustainability. One being the woman that I am very honored to mention, Miss Sustainability herself, Miss Majora Carter. Miss Carter worked tirelessly to create a more sustainable and cleaner environment in the New York City area. She created a healthier Hudson River waterfront, stopped 40% of New York's municipal sewage waste from being dumped into the plant facility, and created jobs and economic opportunities throughout the whole South Bronx, benefiting people of color like the people that's in this chat. In the poorest zip code in New York City by promoting green in the ghetto, she did it for the baby dolls.
Period. And next, we will be introducing the woman who made it possible for all African American environmental women today. We now have Lisa P. Jackson, formerly known as the Administrator of the United States Environmental Protection Agency. During Jackson's time as the Administrator of the EPA, she is the first African American woman to hold the position. Okay? Ms. Jackson supervised multi-million-dollar waste cleanup projects in central New Jersey, reduced greenhouse gases, and led a staff of nearly 3,000 EPA employees who all manage state parks, beaches, fish and wildlife programs, and as well as water and air pollution control.
Okay. Following up is a wonderful woman named Wangari Maathai, who was a political and environmental activist. Mrs. Maathai was the first African woman to receive the Nobel Peace Prize in 2004. She was also the founder of the Green Belt movement and has assisted women in planting more than 20 million trees on their farms, schools, and church compounds in order to create a healthier environment for kids.
Now we're going to talk about a Guatemalan woman who specializes in climate science and fought to spread awareness to people of color. Su nombre es Nicole Hernandez Hammer. Ella estudió el aumento nivel del mar y los impactos del cambio climático en las comunidades de color. Her main research was on how climate change was affecting communities of color and people with low incomes. Con esta información, ella puede pasar el mensaje y hacer más investigación para ayudar. Also, Ms. Hammer organized protests to spread awareness and educate the community on climate change.
Last but not least, I'll be introducing a powerful and achieving hydrogeologist, Ms. Zelma Mae Jackson, a woman who worked in a mining field with a bunch of men who just disagreed with her because of the fact that she was a woman and it was mainly a male-dominated workplace, and because she was a woman of color. She overcame those obstacles through tirelessly working and trying to continue her research in groundwater and uranium to better help the environment.
Next topic, now we're going to be speaking about the women and their obstacles and how they got to where they got to be today.
I'm going to just go off the bat and say here, Majora is a black woman, so you already know that didn't just come with a medal or, oh, hey, yeah, we're going to treat you like you're supposed to. No. Being a black woman, especially in the industry that she's in, of course they looked down upon her. Like, they didn't think that she was going to make it. They didn't think that she was going to succeed. Not only was she black, she was a woman, so of course that didn't come right. But that wasn't even the only obstacle that she went through. She went through living in a ghetto, literally the ghetto, the slums. Not where the nice little baby dolls play. Nah, you literally had to be scared who got shot at her corner. Literally, her brother got gunned down. In her area, she had broken down abandoned homes and abandoned properties from where people would shop at and all that stuff like that. Basically, those businesses that was all big and they were gone.
Right. Anybody else want to speak about their woman next?
My woman, honestly, she was just discriminated against because she was a black woman in a male-dominated field and predominantly white, field at that. So, and plus where she was from, it wasn't too many of them. So when she moved out west, like, she was probably one of the only women miners down there. She had this little story about something about a drill bit wasn't working and stuff. So she met this other guy and they was working on it and stuff. And basically she built the bond with him, and which made him realize, like, probably women or black people aren't that bad in a sense or whatever. And after that, everybody else started like respecting her a little bit more and her props for doing what she was doing for the environment.
Period. That was like how Majora was. Majora had to basically jump a whole front step just so people can actually realize that she's actually a person and that she actually know what she's talking about, know what she's doing. And yeah, that's basically how she was.
Yeah. my person, she was harassed, she was threatened, she was beaten, and she was in jail. So she didn't have it too good either. She was just trying to fight for women's rights. She was trying to fight what was right for her community. And she just wanted to save life. She wanted to be more to life.
Right. That's like my lady. She wanted to be against all odds. Like, literally, after she had went through her whole thing with Hurricane Katrina, because Hurricane Katrina had hit New Orleans really bad where she was living at the time, she realized that with the hurricane hitting, there were a lot of problems such as like pollution of different oils coming from the cars, houses, sewage and stuff like that. And that was going to mess up the swamps and, you know, this wildlife period in New Orleans. So she took it upon herself to educate herself in that field of environmental science environmental science and biotech, instead of going to school to be that nurse and that doctor, which her family wanted her to be. So she went against them and still made a great impression. She wound up being elected by Barack Obama himself to be the environmental, protection agency leader. That's a really big accomplishment. As a black woman, the first black woman to hold that position, you holding some weight. Okay? Hold weight.
Yeah, my girl, she was well educated too. She wanted to stay educated so she can learn how to help people too. She had faith in her people.
My woman changed her community around to a place that she now wants to stay in. I think that kind of opened my eyes a bit because I had the same thought as her. First of all, me and her both live in communities that are not great, of course. You can't just, walk to the corner store at my house, my block. You can't really do that. So seeing how she changed her community, well, she tries and attempts and is succeeding in changing her community around to be healthier and better, it kind of makes me look at my community like, well, I can do the same.
Right. My woman inspired me also in the same way. Like, she found a problem as a young girl, found the problem, and wanted to make a change and be different. Like, paving ways for me so I cannot work as hard as she had to get to where she had to be. And she just wanted better for African American people in general in America when it came to pollution and such things, because as we know, people of color live in the poor neighborhoods where there's the factories and there's the most gas, in the air and stuff like that. So she saw that problem and wanted to create greenhouses and change those neighborhoods around for the better. So I think that was dope.
Yeah. She inspired me too. She went all around the world, touching people's hearts of like all types of women, because they didn't have nothing. So she had faith in them. She wanted to help people. She wanted to make the environment better for people. She planted so many trees and helped educate other people to plant trees. It wasn't.
Shoot, see, that inspires me too. Baby doll, period.
It was brave of her to, stick it out through whatever she was going through in her field and dealing with the discrimination. Of course, like, you got to be a strong person to deal with that type of stuff, because if you know anything about your history,
right?
Like, a while ago, like the 1900s and stuff, discrimination was like horrible, especially against women, because of what they was fighting for, like women votes to write or have different jobs, or they fought for different positions and stuff like that. So I do think it was brave of her to stay and stick through it. It inspired me to go do no stuff like that, but I do give her props for sticking it through with that, because I know it had to be real tough with a bunch of white men.
Okay. Zaddy, you got anything?
My woman inspired me to help other people with climate change as well. She was very inspiring in going to communities of people of color and educating them about what's going on with the climate and trying to help them find ways to help the climate and change for better.
Very brave. Very brave. I think one thing all of our women, all we can say about all of our women, is the fact that they went against all odds while their rights and stuff wasn't being put on a platter, but they made it. And I think that that's wonderful.
Right. They had a mission. They did what they had to do, and they carried.
Yeah, they stood out. They had a mission.
But now to close out the podcast, thank you for tuning in with your favorite Earth Sisters. And
Period.
Yeah.
The Earth Sisters have spoken. Period. Let us now hear from our final group of students. Elijah, Chris, Gabriel, and Halim are also known as the Green Team.
Welcome to the Green Team Podcast, the show created by high school students from WB Saul High School, which is mainly focused around environmental issues affecting the world right now.
In this episode, we will explore several different environmental activists and their impact on the community and environment.
I think it's important that I talk about Chico Mendes because he's very impactful for what he did. His original name was Francisco Alves Mendes Jr. Was born on December 15th, 1944. He was a Brazilian labor leader and conservationist who defended the interests of rubber tree tappers in the Amazonian state of Acre, calling for land reform and preservation of the Amazon rainforest. His activism won him recognition throughout Brazil and other parts of the world, but it also provoked local ranchers who eventually arranged his murder.
Okay. My name is Chris Matillery, and I would gladly introduce Derek Pitts. He was born in Philadelphia on January 22nd, 1955. His determination got him hired as a NASA ambassador. And he has said himself I always wanted to be a scientist. Since the earliest I could possibly remember. At first, I wanted to be in space aviation. I wanted to be an astronaut. But I didn't know that there were black people that were astronauts. I didn't know that there were black people in the Air Force, ones that flew planes. I didn't know any of that stuff. I had no idea. So I had no role model to point me in that direction. The role models that were around me were very different. Since they were much closer, it made it more likely that I was probably going to look at something much more typical, rather than something so exotic. He created a television program for PBS and has many awards. His motto is, eat, breathe, do science, sleep later. When Derek was about 8, he had 3 instances where he just knew he wanted to be an astronomer. He used to look up the stars all the time and follow them in his neighborhood. When he turned about 17, he got hired at Franklin Institute by an astronomer and got to oversee all their work. He graduated from Germantown Academy and soon went to college and received his bachelor's degree at St. Lawrence University. That was in 1978, and from there on, he taught kids to look up in the stars and study them.
When Chico Mendes was young, he worked in bad conditions. The rubber from these trees are also very toxic to humans and animals. So people like Chico Mendes work their best to extract the rubber from the trees. A final quote that I want to end this off with by Chico is, "At first, I thought I was fighting to save rubber trees. Then I thought I was fighting to save the Amazon rainforest. Now I realize I'm fighting for humanity."
Margaret Thomas Williams was an American geologist. She was the first American geologist. She was born on the day of December 24th, 1895 in Washington, D.C. She was educated at Howard University. While she was working towards her bachelor's degree at Howard University, she was employed as an elementary school teacher, a position which marked the beginning of her lifelong. Any of y'all know what that was? Yeah. So she was a geologist. I told y'all that already. If none of y'all know what a geologist is, a geologist is when that specific person studies the earth.
So my environmental person, it was Paul J. Crutzen. He was born in 1993, Amsterdam, Netherlands. He is an atmospheric chemist who has won the Nobel Prize back in 1955. He is well known for his research on stuff like climate change and global warming, and he has also popularized the term anthroponics. And in college, he went to Stockholm University. He matters to this day because he found out that nitrogen oxide can accelerate the destruction of the ozone layers to protect us from the sun. That's it from me.
If any of these people that we shared to y'all were interesting, please feel free to look them up and read more on them.
Thank you, Green Team, and I second Elijah's recommendation to look up and learn more about any and all of the Earth professionals discussed throughout our Saul Talk. That concludes our first Saul Talk podcast featuring the class of 2021 Natural Resource Management students from WB Saul High School of Agricultural Sciences in Philadelphia. We look forward to you listening to more of our Saul Talk conversations in the future, where we will address environmental issues such as climate change, waste management solutions, and environmental justice topics. Thank you for listening, and before we go, shout outs to WHYY, Media Lab, and Gabriel Setright for your support and encouragement. E-Block out. Welcome to Saul Talk, a series of conversations between students who attend WB Saul High School of Agricultural Sciences in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm Mr. Smith, your Saul Talk host, as well as the career and technical educator responsible for the natural resource management students featured in this episode. Our objective is to bring awareness, understanding, provide solution, and advocate for environmental topics and issues relevant to our class, directly affecting our communities, and impacting our planet at large. Today, my students will be discussing climate change and greenhouse gas reforms.
Welcome to our Natural Resource Management podcast. I'm Anthony, and I'm here with Kalamar, Elijah, and Dimitri. Today, we will talk about climate change and how we could potentially lower our usage on electronics and materialistic items. So, what is climate change? I'm going to pass this question off to you, Dimitri.
Thank you, Anthony. So, climate change or global warming is a trend scientists have observed since around the mid-20th century and attribute it to the human expansion of the greenhouse effect, a warming that results when the atmosphere traps heat radiating from Earth towards space. Certain gases in the atmosphere block heat from escaping, and long-lived gases that remain in the atmosphere and do not respond physically or chemically to changes in temperature are described as forcing climate change. These gases include water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and CFCs. Water vapor is the most abundant greenhouse gas, but importantly, it acts as feedback to climate. Water vapor increases as the Earth's atmosphere warms, but so does the possibility of clouds and precipitation. Carbon dioxide, or CO2, is a minor but very important component in the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is released through natural processes such as respiration and volcano eruptions, and through human activities such as deforestation and the burning of fossil fuels. Humans have increased atmospheric CO2 concentration by 47% since the Industrial Revolution. Methane, a hydrocarbon gas produced both through natural sources and human activities, including the decomposition of waste in landfills, agriculture, especially rice cultivation, as well as the ruminant digestion of manure management associated with domestic livestock. On a molecule-for-molecule basis, methane is far more potent a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, 28 times more potent. Nitrous oxide is a powerful greenhouse gas produced by soil cultivation practices, especially when used in commercial organic fertilizers, fossil fuel combustion, and nitric acid production. Chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, are an entirely synthetic compound of human origin. They were originally used in a number of applications such as aerosol sprays, packing materials, solvents, and refrigerants like those in refrigerators and air conditioning units, but they are now heavily regulated in production and released into the atmosphere for their ability to erode the ozone layer, as observed by 3 scientists who discovered a hole in the ozone layer above the South Pole. Majority of these gases are produced by humans while trying to produce energy and make products for the population. Some clean sources of energy that are alternatives to fossil fuels include solar energy, wind energy, hydro energy, tidal energy, geothermal energy, and biomass energy. But Kalamar, what is your opinion on climate change, and what are some alternative products we can use?
My opinion on climate change, specifically when it comes to our carbon footprints, is that we should all try to reduce it as much as we can, as soon as we can. The carbon emissions from burning fossil fuels accumulates if there's not enough biocapacity to absorb it, so it's basically trapping it in the atmosphere, which isn't good for us or the environment. even if it's doing something simple like unplugging electronics that are in use or trying different types of transportation instead of using your car, it would make a difference. 2 new things I learned while doing more research on this was that there's products called Energy Star products, which are basically the same or better than a standard product and uses less energy. The second is called a low flow shower head. They just reduce the amount of hot water you use and can help save up to 350 pounds of CO2. If society continues to make more of these types of things, it would make such a difference.
Adding on to what Kilmar said, some really easy ways to reduce your carbon footprint would be to stop buying fast fashion and try to buy more thrifted or recycled clothing. Washing the clothes with cold water instead of warm or hot water will keep the clothes the same quality. Also, changing your light bulbs to LED light bulbs are better. Even though LED light bulbs cost more, they only use a quarter of the energy and last 25 times longer than a regular light bulb. Finally, if you have no other form of transportation like taking the bus, riding a bike, or just walking to your destination, you could use your car as an alternative if it has cruise control. Cruise control is useful, especially if you are taking long trips somewhere, because it helps save gas.
Alright, so I decided to take a political approach with my research to see what politicians, or more specifically the president and the next upcoming president, thinks about climate change. And Donald Trump has said that he knows more about climate change than anyone else, but also denied its existence. There is clear evidence on climate change, such as the shrinking or melting of glaciers, the ice on rivers and lakes breaking up sooner, trees are flowering sooner, and plant and animal ranges are shifting. When Trump did finally speak upon it, he said that the United States carries an unfair burden with climate change compared to the rest of the world, in which I disagree. Many of us just want to help our environment, as we know that climate change is not only extremely harmful for us, but to the rest of the planet. He doesn't plan to do much in regards to climate change to slow it down or to stop it. Joe Biden plans to incentivize rapid deployment through Congress of clean energy innovations. He says he wants to make historic investments into clean energy and climate research and innovation. Not only does he want to change this in the United States, but he wants to team up with some American allies to deplete their carbon emissions by focusing on their domestic climate targets. Joe Biden has a plan against climate change. Climate change would undoubtedly pose a threat to our health, and it damages our communities with the massive storms that wreak havoc upon cities. He understands that climate change will pose a great threat, so he made a plan to achieve a 100% clean energy economy and net zero emissions no later than 2050.
If you wanted to read more about carbon footprint reduction types on a blog post called State of Planet on columbia.edu.
To further your information, the website I used is climate.nasa.gov.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome to our podcast. Today we have myself, Halim, Gabriel, Zadelis, Daniel, and Chris.
Climate change is very important to be educated on, and we're here to talk about the topics associated with it.
It is very important to learn about the impacts of climate change as well.
And also, it's important to keep the environment clean so we all can be healthy.
More so, we are here to help you understand the importance of climate change and ways that we can help reverse the damage, or at least help with it, so we can all have a better future.
To start off, I'm going to talk about ways you can reduce your carbon footprint. It is easy and beneficial. Some ways to reduce your carbon footprint is by eating less meat, choosing organic and local foods, composting your food waste, and using things that are reusable. You can also start by turning off lights when it isn't needed and unplugging your electronic devices that's not in use. It's better to lessen energy consumption and your carbon footprint because it can help lower the chances of irreversible damage of climate change.
Can those methods be used in the future?
Good thing you asked. Yes, these methods apply to the future as well. Even if things may be different with higher tech, these are simple ways we can still help with fixing climate change and with air and water quality.
Cool, good thing you mentioned air quality. Did you know a single human breathes 2 gallons of air per minute, which means around 3,400 gallons of air each day.
Wow, 2 gallons of air per minute? Man's an air guzzler, yo.
When we inhale pollution, it literally takes 1 to 2 years out of our human life. It has effects as small as burning eyes and itchy throats to as large as breathing problems and death.
Talking about air, I'm going to start talking about how the airborne virus, COVID-19, affected climate change for the good and bad.
Yes, COVID-19 has affected climate change in both good and bad ways. It's crazy how everything just happened all at once, with affecting human health to affecting climate change in different ways.
COVID-19 affecting climate change for the worst would be deforestation in the Amazon, weakening the climate policies, less money for climate resilience and renewable energy, surprisingly more plastic and more cars. COVID-19 affected climate change for the better would be green recovery in many countries such as Europe, more biking and walking instead of buses, less international travel, and one that's an opinion is living more simply.
Yeah, that's true. Now Daniel's going to talk about the differences between renewable and non-renewable energy.
Thanks, Halim. So, energy comes in many shapes, forms, and quantities, but all energy types fall into 2 different categories, which is renewable and non-renewable energy. Now, the 5 main renewable energy resources include solar, wind, hydroelectricity, which is powered by water, biomass, which is when an animal degrades or decomposes into the earth, that type of energy, and then geothermal energy, which is like the heat inside of the earth. Now, non-renewable energy resources consist of coal, nuclear energy, oil, and natural gases. Now, the difference between these 2 separate categories, while they are both energy, is that renewable energy resources can be and are naturally replenished over generally short periods of time when compared to the entire life cycle of, or the entire lifespan of the Earth. Now, non-renewable energy resources are available in limited supplies, which is normally due to the long time that it takes them to be replenished or the fact that they cannot be replenished whatsoever.
Wait, so considering that a good amount of non-renewable resources are fossil fuels, what kind of impact do they have on climate change?
Well, Chris, fossil fuels produce large quantities of CO2, carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas. And when those are burned, those carbon emissions trap heat in the atmosphere, which isn't good for the environment and can lead to negative climate change.
Last but not least, let's shift over to the energy laws and energy consumption. The purpose of energy laws and regulations is that they are there to give affordable energy by sustaining competitive markets while protecting the economic, environmental, and security interests of the U.S. Energy consumption is also very important because of all the toxic gases it releases. The less energy we use, the better for the environment. Back in 2016, the total world energy came from fossil fuels with 80%, biofuels of 10%, 5% nuclear, and 5% renewable.
Overall, with this information, we now know how to reduce our carbon footprint.
Oh, we also know the difference between renewable and non-renewable energy.
And about energy consumption.
And air quality.
And as well as knowing how COVID-19 has affected the environment. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it helps you understand more about climate change. And have a nice day.
Yeah.
Yo, what up? You are now tuned into the Climate Sisters podcast featuring JK, myself, Sierra, and Tamira.
Today we are going to be talking about climate change. As many of you know, climate change is a big problem that has been going on for some time now. This year has been one of the worst years so far in terms of climate change.
Following up from one of the worst years, it's also been one of the best years for climate change. Being as though that COVID-19 has came upon us and, forced us to be on quarantine, human interaction outside with natural resources such as water, land, nature, animals, has brought our CO2 emissions down and the pollution levels from our cars, buses, and such things like that. So in some cities, it's even encouraged some wildlife to roam the streets and come out and play.
Well, I was doing some research actually, and I came across this blog from, I believe it's like Columbia.edu or something like that. But the name of the source was like COVID-19's long-term effects on climate change, for better or worse, I believe it was. And basically they were saying that a lot of the lockdowns and stuff around the world did help control COVID. In Brazil, being as though how COVID is hitting so hard, they're focused more on controlling their COVID numbers or whatever. But it's like illegal miners and stuff who are out of work are going to cut down trees and, you know, start using our resources and stuff illegally. And it's like tearing down the Amazon, like you were saying too, you know, with all the fossil fuels burning and stuff, you know, not everybody going to work. And it makes it hard for them to continue to keep burning those fossil fuels and petroleum and stuff like that to keep their industries open. But
yes,
Trump been doing some dumb stuff.
And it's been really super controversial over that. Like, that's been like a really big topic everybody was talking about, like how Donald Trump didn't not trying to get into politics or whatever, but how he didn't support or really didn't, you know, support the climate change movement. And he also made another rogue comment. Excuse me if I get the quote wrong. He said something around the lines of climate change is not real. So with that being said, that puts into a perspective of, in my opinion, somebody who's very ignorant, because if you don't believe in climate change, you also don't believe in life itself. Everything evolves around climate change. Everything we do makes climate change happen. Every little mistake, every little thing we do contributes to a change in our atmosphere, a change in our world, a change in our soil, a change in everything.
Yes,
you know?
I agree with that too. I want to ask y'all a question. With Joe Biden being the president now, what do you think he's going to do to help climate change?
His pros, well, how he operates and how he does things. So I honestly feel as though Joe Biden, he's going to take the initiative to try, because all it starts with one person in power, and not everybody under him will follow, but at least a good, I say 5-10% will, you know, because everybody in politics aren't just oblivious to climate change. We know what's happening, you know?
Yeah, because according to this blog by this woman named Azada Adauta, if it wasn't for COVID-19, climate change would be the top news of this year. There has been 16 weather disasters that happened this year already. Especially in California, there was like many fires. Like it took over 4 million acres since the beginning of 2020, which is twice more than what happened in 2018.
Right. So speaking of California now, we can switch over into speaking on how to reduce our carbon footprint and future solutions, you know?
Yeah. It was this one website, and she talked about a healthy way to reduce your carbon footprint. Like, for starters, food waste. We can stop wasting food by starting to plan meals ahead of time and saving leftovers and buying only what you need.
You could also use solar panels in your house, like use renewable energy or sustainable energy, basically. Using solar panels, you can reduce a lot of your carbon footprint.
And I think that's actually really dope. And you actually beautifully brought us into our next topic. So as we know, non-renewable and renewable resources are things that are vital to human survival. Like, those non-renewable energies are categorized as coal, nuclear energy, oil, and natural gases. And then our renewable energies, which can replenish themselves, right, are solar, wind, water, also known as hydropower, biomass or organic material from plants and animals, composting basically, as an example, and then the geothermal, which is the natural heat coming from Earth that we can use. So meanwhile, while renewable energy resources have the advantage of unlimited supply over the long haul.
Yeah. I don't know if you mentioned this, but I know fossil fuels is also a non-renewable energy, and nuclear.
But fossil fuels are basically hydrocarbon containing materials, so that did go along with coal, because coal is like number one on the fossil fuels.
That's all of that is very true, but I don't think many people know the main difference between renewable and non-renewable resources. But basically, which I also got from science.com, and basically the difference between renewable and non-renewable energy is the combustion and consumption of fuel. So, in other words, is basically saying non-renewable energy is made from combustion and fuels that you can burn or, you know, do a lot of things with, but they emit gases and CO2 and, you know, other harmful chemicals into our atmosphere.
Yes, and you beautifully brought us right into our next one again by opening us into energy consumption. So, coming to energy consumption, humans use a lot of energy. We are made of energy. We are energy. You feel me? The Energy Policy Act, which is rephrased as the EPA, it addresses energy production, and then the act also provides loans and guarantees for entities that develop or use innovative technologies, such as like solar panels, on people's houses. People are switching over to, the cleaner way.
I agree with you. Another thing I want to talk about is a thermic power production. And a lot of people might not know what that is, but almost 90% of electricity is generated by thermoelectric power plants.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's a new fact for me. And also, if y'all guys didn't know, like in Europe, they use a lot of hydropower. Like a lot of their power to their cities are powered by like turbines.
And the thing that you were talking about, Jay, is controlled and ran by the currents and waves of the water. And they got like those huge panels under there, just like flip power their cities and stuff, which is an amazing thing, honestly.
Really cool. And I feel like the United States should kind of switch over to that because, as we all know, we're really wasteful. Americans are really wasteful. So just a little tip for us to kind of switch our power sources.
The U.S. need to follow behind that. Like, if we just got too many issues, and we got a lot of brains here to not be solving none of these issues, like. It's killing me. It really is.
I know, but this year it's been hard. It's been a little bit hard for people to even act on most of this stuff because certain scientists, they can't even like travel because of the pandemic too. They can't travel and get certain data to start the field work to even help.
Yeah. Listen, guys, we got to get out of here. But all I'm saying is, when everything is over and said and done with, please, 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 please take care of where we live. We don't got nowhere else to go.
Yes, people use their common sense.
So that concludes our Saul Talk on climate change with these outstanding natural resource management students from WB Saul High School of Agricultural Sciences. We truly hope you got something out of our conversation and hope you tune in to our other Saul Talks where we will address more environmental issues. Welcome to Saul Talk, a series of conversations between students who attend WB Saul High School of Agricultural Sciences in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm Mr. Smith, your Saul Talk host, as well as the career and technical educator responsible for these amazing natural resource management students featured in this episode. Our objective is to bring awareness, understanding, provide solution, and advocate for environmental topics and issues relevant to our class, directly affecting our communities, and impacting our planet at large. Today, my students will be discussing municipal waste management and strategies for cities like Philadelphia to shift towards zero waste.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to our podcast. If you're new here, hi, I'm Elijah. Today, we're going to be speaking about waste management here in Philadelphia.
Sayera, tell us a little more about this topic.
According to the EPA's webpage titled The Facts and Figures on Materials, Waste, and Recycling, in 2018, America generated 292 tons of solid waste. Of that, approximately 69 million tons were recycled and 25 million tons were composted. The Philadelphia Waste Industries Association states that Pennsylvania generates approximately 8.7 million tons of municipal waste annually. That's about 1,360 pounds per person every year. According to a study produced for the State Department of Environmental Protection, the 10 most common materials in Pennsylvania residential waste include food waste and non-recyclable paper, as the most common trash being thrown away. The primary objective of waste management is to reduce environmental pollution and ensure public health and safety. Currently, the City of Philadelphia Street Department, the municipality responsible for Philadelphia waste management, has drafted a municipal waste management plan with the objective of reforming existing waste strategies and policies supporting the city goal of zero waste by 2035.
I wanted to address some things I learned while researching regarding Philadelphia and waste management issues. This one article on www.inquirer.com talked about how this one man named Hunt Griffith found out from a reporter that all the recyclables being picked up by the city streets department in Philadelphia were all going straight to an incinerator. He was shocked by this and said, quote, "When you put out recycling, you expect it to be recycled," end quote. He was not happy about this, especially since he and his roommates had carefully separated recyclables just for all of it to go to waste. This is how a lot of people here in Philadelphia feel. At least half of the items for recycling are now being incinerated because of the price. A contractor wanted to process them by separating paper, plastic, metals, and glass, as well as finding markets for them. The cost is too high. Another issue is most of the stuff processed to recycle isn't able to because of it being contaminated with food, residue, water, or it just not being a recyclable item. I also read in a different article on what exactly happens to the waste here in Philadelphia. Each year, they dispose of nearly 1.4 million tons of residential and commercial waste. 50% of it goes to landfills in the state, and 45% of it goes burned in trash incinerators. Landfills produce gases like ammonia, methane, and carbon dioxide. For every 100 tons that is burned, 30 tons becomes toxic ash, and the other 70 tons become air pollution, which are both really harmful for us in the environment.
Thank you, ladies, so much for sharing current local and state waste management. I would like to direct our attention to Sean and Joshua. How are both of you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Doing well.
Very much for asking.
I'm glad you guys are here to help us with understanding, most notably, what exactly is zero waste management?
According to the Center for Ecotechnology website, zero waste is a movement to reduce the amount one consumes and consequently throws away. It's often shown as something that's not easily accessible, but not only can we reduce our waste by adopting a zero waste lifestyle, it can also be more affordable.
Sean, do you have anything to add on?
Yeah, zero waste is basically you just trying to repurpose the waste you make. What that can mean is like stuff like recycling more, composting stuff, or trying to, fix an old VCR or something that you have just so you don't have to throw it away into like the landfill or something.
Let's talk more specifically about Philadelphia, where all of us live. How is Philadelphia currently managing their waste in comparison to this goal that they have for becoming a zero waste city?
Currently, most of our trash still gets put in landfills, and our recycling, only half of it is recycled and the other half is still burned. So honestly, I wouldn't say all that well compared to other cities like San Francisco, which have their own little system they have set up where a majority of their stuff is recycled and only about maybe 5% go into landfills.
So Joshua, Sean brings up a good point that there are other locations like San Francisco that are actively pursuing or very near being zero waste. Are there any other examples that you know of that we can possibly model our transition from current state to zero waste?
Actually, Sweden uses their way of burning waste into something positive, like producing energy, while Philadelphia just burns their waste, adding to the CO2 emissions.
So what I'm hearing from you is that in Philadelphia, a lot of our recyclables are just incinerated, whereas someplace like Sweden actually takes recyclables and harvests that energy to become heat or energy to power the city. Is that correct?
That is correct. I feel as though it would still be called recycling, considering that we're using that trash and recycling it into something more positive, like energy for the city.
I would say our city can benefit from following their model because a lot more homes would have a cheaper way to pay for heat, especially since they're the ones making it. They would definitely have a better way to pay for heat and electricity, and it would help a lot of other, poorer communities.
So then how can a city like Philadelphia benefit from following Sweden's model?
In class, we learned about how in Sweden, they produce electricity and heat for the residents from their waste that's incinerated. Here in Philly, the only thing we produce with our incinerators is air pollution and toxic ash. But if we could somehow take inspiration from Sweden and actually make something positive come from our waste, it could make a big change. But there is a company that is already doing this. That company's name is Corvanta. So Corvanta's transfer station in Southwest Philly collects recyclables from the parts of the city that waste management doesn't cover, those being all the parts that aren't north and northeast Philadelphia. They collect it and send it to their waste-to-energy plant that the company owns out in Chester County. And from there, the recyclables are incinerated, but the burned material creates steam that generates electricity and is then sent out through the local power grid. And the concerns of air pollution are definitely still present, but the company says that its equipment removes much of the pollutants, and the ash residue is collected and sent off to a landfill. One of the reasons the company doesn't collect from the whole city is because the cost to collect recyclables has been increasing in recent years, making it more and more difficult for the city to afford collection services. As of this year, Philly had to pay $105 per ton of recyclables, and with the 112,000 ton estimate from the year 2019, because the figures for 2020 are unavailable as of the time of this recording, which is a very significant amount of money to spend on recyclable materials that aren't going to be recycled.
Let's now shift our attention to recyclables such as paper products, plastics and metals, and electronic waste such as cell phones, computers, and televisions. I now have Ajay and Sayer with me, and I would love for them to speak a little bit about what exactly is recyclable. Earlier, Sayer mentioned that the U.S. produces 292.4 million tons of waste annually. That's a lot. Of that waste, 75% of it actually could be recycled, but we as a nation only really recycle about 30%.
Recycling plays a big part. You know, you want to see the world thrive, you want to see the world grow. So if you're not paying attention to what you're putting in your trash and where you're putting your trash, it can have a long-term effect on our environment. In Philadelphia, we can recycle plastics, paper, cartons, metals, glasses, and we can also recycle cardboard all at the same time, right? But you also have to take the precautions in with these certain things. So with your glasses, you have to rinse them out. You have to make sure you take the wrappings off and the lids. With cardboard, you have to make sure it's completely washed off and it's stained. It is no longer recyclable. It goes in your regular trash. Different types of boxing and stuff like that, like milk cartons and stuff, that is also recyclable. You just have to rinse it off, make sure the caps are in the trash and things like that. Now, as for things that aren't recyclable, that find their way in recycle bins sometimes, plastic bags, styrofoam. We also have disposable bags, tissues, and like if you garden hoses and things.
Thank you very much. So Sayer, what exactly does Philadelphia do with e-waste or electronic waste, such as like televisions, computers, flat screen TVs? Does the municipality take care of it?
A lot of people do is they throw their electronics in the trash, and then they'll take it to our landfills, in which the toxic stuff like the metals and the liquids and stuff in the foam will be like seeped down into the ground and soil, and it will mess up our soils. But not only that, they can sometimes, like when it rains, the toxic stuff, like the toxic liquids in it, like the mercury and the toxic metals like lead, PVC, plastic, they all get into the soil and can like mess up the legs or even sometimes our water supplies. And I feel as though e-waste should be mandatory of recycling too, because then we can downsize and reduce the amount of toxic metals and liquids that goes into our waters, into our soils and stuff. So I feel as though that's the step Philadelphia should take, and it's fairly easy to recycle. You even have like companies and stores telling you that, hey, we'll take your old stuff that can be reused to make new stuff. They will take it. If you don't want something no more, you can give it to like a Salvation Army and they'll sell it to people who actually want it. So not only are you reusing, you're also giving something to people who also want it too.
Why even recycle? Recycling in Philly, well, recycling period. Recycling is the right way to reduce contaminations in our city. So being though that we as human beings, we bring a lot of trash in and out of our lives, reduce, reuse, recycle. I mean, like we got water bottles that are made from recycling. We have all types of nails made, boxes, all kinds of stuff that are made from recycling your trash.
So what I'm hearing is that our city should shift away from even recycling first, but focusing on repurposing and then using recycling as the secondary approach.
Yeah.
I feel like now I also think that people should be more educated on the process, a process that I picked up from a website called recyclespot.org. They split it up into four complete steps. It was the first one was collecting and recycling. Processing was the process that they go through, picking out the trash and, putting where it goes in separate areas. And then manufacturing would be the making of the old stuff into new stuff. And then the fourth one being buying recycled products.
That sounds like a very solid plan that I would definitely encourage Philadelphia to adopt, just having multiple ways of using our waste that isn't exclusively resulting in incineration or landfills. Sayera, you have something else you want to share?
So I worked at the zoo, and we had this little game where you guess like what something is made out of. And it was this pair of jeans that were actually made out of melted down bottles, like recyclable bottles. And what they do, they was melted down and they was threaded into jeans like materials and stuff. And I thought that was really cool because I didn't know that we did that. You can make so many new things with these water bottles. I mean, making jeans out of melted down water bottles, that's just mind blowing to me.
That's dope. Okay, fashion statement, period.
We also made a pencil too.
Another thing in Philly that we can do is, start giving out more information on drop off and pickup spots for hazardous waste. Usually it's called household waste because it's usually like computers, MacBooks, batteries, and rechargeable things. If you can give out more information on what's accepted and what's not accepted, we can go a long way as well too. All about the information.
I support that. And I think what you are doing as students and citizens of Philadelphia is exactly that. You are educating your community that recycling and repurposing is something that we should adopt, not only expect our city to do it, but everybody at the local residential level. So let's shift over to another topic. In order for the city to become zero waste, the residents within Philadelphia must also shift their behaviors. I have Maxine and Ashanti with me, and I would like for you guys to share some recommendations you may have for what can we do around our homes to be zero waste citizens.
I would avoid using single-use plastic items like Ziploc bags. I would stop buying water bottles, specifically single-use plastic water bottles, because technically you're not buying the water, you're buying the plastic. You got water at home on your tap. If you do use any cardboard items and it has like a little plastic sheet, you should unfold it and take the sheet out and then recycle them.
Well, that's a good recommendation. And then a good segue to our next question, which is, what are some policies that our city or state can do to help people or encourage people to become more zero waste oriented?
If Philadelphia made our citizens separate and sort our waste more, like I've watched a documentary that happened in Japan where a small town sorted their waste in 45 different categories, which I know that's a little bit too extreme for Philadelphia, but in Japan, when they were sorting out the different waste in the different categories, less was going into landfills. Now, I'm not saying that we have to do 45, it could be way less than that. But what I'm saying is if we find different places or different areas where our waste could be sorted, whether it's reused, refurbished, recycled, like anything, less trash would eventually be in the landfill.
Shanti, do you have any other recommendations?
I recommend, like San Francisco, they banned the styrofoam and the plastics. I recommend our city doing something like that as well, which I know that those are noticeably cheaper items than switching over to more metal and things. But to save our environment, I think that would be a great way to do so. Another thing I would recommend is more fines on the businesses and everyone like who produces more waste, because eventually they will get tired of paying so much and say, hey, I need to lessen my impact in order to save more money.
So along that line, there are many cities that have put restrictions or bans on the use of plastic bags, and they actually charge. How do you feel about taking that approach to reducing the amount of plastic bags being used in the general population?
I think the city of Philadelphia should make it mandatory that businesses, big or small, that hold plastic straws or bags will now make their customers purchase them. They will no longer be free. The starting price should be 25 cents each, and the money will not go towards the business, but will go towards the tax that the business will be given if they still choose to hold these single-use plastic items.
Are there any other suggestions to become more zero waste?
I would avoid doing a lot of food bulk shopping, because a lot of times when you have bulk food, a lot of it goes to waste. Because a lot of times you don't eat a lot of it and you're throwing it straight in the trash. It's going straight to landfills. And maybe if you do bulk shopping and if you garden, that's great compost right there.
Everybody can at least compost more. You know how we have a trash bin, a little recycling bin? Well, how about we add a third bin that we can throw our food scraps away and take to a compost place? In Philly, around us in Pennsylvania, they have many farms, and we can eventually sell the compost to them.
So it almost sounds like you're making a very good recommendation is if the city starts composting and requiring our residents to compost, we can then take that compost and sell it to farmers, generating additional revenue for the city. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That would be a really good policy for us to adopt. Ashanti and Maxine, your recommendations are very solid, and I encourage you to continue to advocate for change.
I want to talk more about composting and how we as Philadelphians could do more. So during my research, I found a website titled cleanphl.org. In this website, it talks about how our food waste is what is causing most of climate change, and how Philadelphian taxpayer money is mainly going into how to stop this problem. One thing I want to share with you all is how the website has different ways to compost, and one of those ways is called Community Compost Network. A community compost network is when you and all of your neighbors take their food wastes and take it to any spot on your block to make new soil. This new soil could be used to make a community garden. Community composting is a very good alternative to just throwing away your food waste because it costs little to no money, and it is also a great way to interact with other people in your neighborhood. The City of Philadelphia has two plans for the future called the City of Philadelphia's Greenworks Sustainability Plan and Zero Waste and Litter Action Plan. These plans will help spread the need for community composting networks all over the city so everyone can compost their waste without having to worry about wasting their tax and paying money. This plan is currently in action as stated in the website. The network will include urban, agriculture, community gardens, recreation, and school sites throughout the city, Philadelphia Parks and Recreation's Fairmount Park Organic Recycling Center, and the Streets Department's Sanitation Convenience Centers, where community scaling composting systems are being installed. Compost things like leaves, lawn cuttings, wood chips, and herbivore manure. These things I listed are very good for composting because they can be used to make soil, and then it could be given to farmers or anyone who needs it.
The less that we waste, the more that we can sort out our waste into different purpose or recycle, the less we are going to have in our landfills. All right, so that concludes our Saul Talk on waste management with our outstanding natural resource management students from WB Saul High School of Agricultural Sciences. We truly hope you got something out of our conversation. Tune into future episodes because we have a lot more to talk about with regards to our environment and ways that we can contribute and improve the home to where we live.
And thank you, listeners, for spending your time listening to us, and we hope we influenced you to look up more information regarding Philadelphia and waste management issues.